Spider-Man for the PS4 was the only reason that I got a PS4 in the first place. Okay, that and I get to play with my friends and talk shit online. But again, I digress. Spider-Man came out on September 7, 2018. I remember walking out of GameStop on day one. This is by far the best Spider-Man game to date, leagues above Amazing Spider-Man games and on par with Spider-Man Web of Shadows. I remember playing the game in its entirety, minus the expansion, and it's fin to be at the end of 2020 and I've yet to play it. It's already downloaded on my PS4, but other than that, it took me about a month or so to complete on the spectacular difficulty. It was fun to web sling, scale rooftops, beating up bad guys, etc. The one thing that I know we all can agree on is that I dreaded and hated whenever there was a Mary Jane mission. I feel that it was not needed. But anyway, let's get into the story and the main character himself, Spider-Man. Spider-Man suits up and takes on Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin. The two battle out and the Kingpin is ultimately defeated and arrested. Later on, Peter investigates a break-in at one of Fisk's gallery where he runs into his ex-girlfriend, Mary Jane. The robbers were masked gunmen with supernatural enhancements. Peter manages to fight them, but they ultimately escape with the file that Mary Jane had. She uncovers that they are looking for a weapon called Devil's Breath. Peter investigates the origins of the mask by visiting his Aunt May's place of work called F.E.A.S.T. to speak with Martin Lee. He looks at the mask and mistrustfully tells Peter not to probe any further. Peter works for Dr. Otto Octavius. Everything is going well until Mayor Norman Osborn shuts down, pulls the funding, and confiscates most of Otto's research. Later, the Inner Demons continue their attacks on F.E.A.S.T. sites. Desperate, F.E.A.S.T. asks for Spider-Man's help in exchange for revealing who is behind this. Spider-Man manages to hold them off and hindering their plans. Later on, Peter goes to a rally honoring Officer Jefferson Davis and helping Spider-Man with fighting the Inner Demon. The Inner Demons orchestrated a bomb that killed and injured a lot of people, including Jefferson Davis. He had left his wife, Rio Morales, and his son, Miles Morales, behind. This also revealed that Martin Lee is behind the Inner Demons as their leader, Mr. Negative. Peter takes Miles up under his wing and gives him a job at F.E.A.S.T. Sometime after, Peter comes to contact with Sable International, a private security company hired by Noah Osborn. The owner, his name is Silver Sable. She often warns Peter constantly to stay out of her way, to no avail. Peter discovers that Lee has a personal grudge against Osborn. Peter and Mary Jane work together to stop his attack on Grand Central and gets him arrested. Octavius develops technology that's affecting his mental state and boosting his hatred for Osborn. He attacks Rikers Island, releases Rhino, Scorpion, Mr. Negative, Electro, and Vulture, forming the Sinister Six. Octavius, now known as Dr. Octopus, steals the Devil's Breath and releases it onto Town Square. Thousands of New Yorkers were infected. Peter finds out that Aunt May is infected as well. New York goes into disarray. Peter manages to round up majority of the Sinister Six. Mary Jane found out the reason for Martin Lee's hatred is because that he was one of the test subjects at Oscorp's lab, giving him his powers. But this killed Lee's parents because he couldn't control his powers. Mary Jane finds the cure to Devil's Breath and promptly tells Peter. Peter defeats Lee once again. However, Octavius kidnaps Osborn and takes the cure with him. Peter prepares to face off against Octavius by building him a new suit. The final confrontation began and it was revealed that Octavius knew Peter was Spider-Man. Peter defeats him and manages to save a good amount of the cure, but there isn't enough time to mass produce it and save his aunt. So he has to make a choice to save the city. Peter makes the hard choice, and now he has to see his aunt for one last time just to ease her final pain. 3 months later, Peter and Mary Jane rekindle their relationship. In the mid-credit scene during the outbreak, Miles was bitten by a spider. He then shows Peter his powers and he shows him that he's not alone. In the post-credit scene, it is revealed that Harry Osborn is terminally ill. He's kept in a tank with a black whip-like substance. It ends with the substance reacting to Norman's hand, teasing a sequel. Peter Parker is a character that any adult can relate to, minus the superpowers. He's always late to work, he's always broke, and he's always having trouble keeping a roof over his head. Myself personally can relate to Peter due to certain similarities in both of our lives. For example, his aunt is always giving him money for no reason, kind of like my mom when she used to just give me money for no reason. and I wake up to hearing my Cash App notification goes off. I'd be like, "Ma, I don't need any money." She replies, "I know, but you're my son though." Another one is that his relationship with Mary Jane. She makes him a better hero and a better man than any medium of Spider-Man. Just like my fiance, she loves me but not afraid to call me out on my BS. Outside his normal adult life, his life as New York's protector has its ups and downs. He's often criticized by the public and J. Jonah Jameson with his podcast, but I find it awfully weird that Peter will subscribe to a guy that all he does is blame Spider-Man for everything that happened in the course of the game. He was also close personally to Dr. Octopus and Mr. Negative. For the sake of their history together, working at F.E.A.S.T, Lee subtly tried to warn Peter to stay out of it. He even wrote a letter to Aunt May apologizing for what he's about to do. Octavia's mind was affected by the artificial intelligence and came up with a master plan to kill Osborn, and knowing Peter's secret and didn't care for hurting his Aunt May was a low blow. Silver Sable had a hard time trusting Peter when she was introduced, but by the end of the game, she came around. Yuri Watanabe trusts him as long as he brings in criminals with minimum property damage, and whatever information that's related to each case she has bears fruit. Peter slowly trained Miles, but little did he know that he was going to get bitten by a radioactive spider, and now has the same powers as himself. Now he has to be a teacher to a preteen on how to control his powers, and learns with great power comes great responsibility. In closing, Peter's character development throughout this game was fantastic. This integration of Peter Parker was already established as a hero, with the game not being an origin story. We just come in well into his career as Spider-Man. We came into the world already knowing his backstory, how he got to where he is now. My opinion is that it's our job to fill in the blanks with every situation before the game began. Maybe I'll explain it in future videos. Nonetheless, this was a good game. I've been playing it again since I finished Ghost of Tsushima, but I've started back on other games for future videos like Days Gone, more on that later, and Red Dead Redemption 2. That's all for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time.